So today we're going to do the handover video on the Elddis Encore 255. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you'll notice that you've got your fill-up points with AdBlue below and also diesel, which is just above there. Opening up the passenger side, you'll also notice that you've got your bonnet release catch, which is here. Pull that to release the bonnet. And then whilst I'm here, this model is fitted with Remis cab blinds. Simply pinch them so you can pull them and move them into place. With the Remis cab blinds, lead from the bottom so they can simply connect onto the side like that via the magnetic strip. When you're leading them back, do the exact same, lead them from the bottom and then clip them in like so. You have also got points here on the front, which again, once unclipped and pulled together, will connect via the magnetic strip. As a rule of thumb with these blinds, what I'd say is just take your time to put them in, and also take your time to take them out. And if it feels like it's being forced, you are probably doing something wrong. So do bear that in mind. And that's a rule of thumb with anything in a motorhome. If it feels like it's being forced, do take a minute to assess what you're doing. Coming over to the bonnet, as I mentioned, your bonnet release catch is just on the passenger side, which release it. I'll open this up now and just point out a couple of things underneath here. Now underneath the bonnet there's not many things that you need to know, but the main things that you're going to need to know is if you're ever jump starting the vehicle. If that is the case, you put your negative onto here, and then your positive is located underneath this cap here, which I've just flipped back down. It's quite hard to see with the light, but you have got a positive sign on here, which, as I say, once flipped back up will indicate that that's for your positive. They're the main things that you need to know, but just to point out a couple more things, you've got your engine oil here along with your dipstick below, your brake disc fluid, your engine coolant, your power steering fluid, and then finally your washer fluid, which is just down in there. Moving on from the engine bay, moving on to the side of the vehicle, you'll notice that on this side of the vehicle you have where your gas bottles are located. For your gas bottles, the main important thing to know is to always have the gas bottles turned off when you are travelling due to safety. So make sure that they're always turned off at the bottle when travelling. However, when you are on site, obviously you need to turn them on so you can feed that gas through. Next to that, you'll notice that you've got your 230 volt hookup point, which is just onto there. So when you're on site, you can simply hook up onto there and let the cap sit on the top of the point, hook up. And then towards the back you've got your cassette toilet and a drain down point underneath. I'll open up the cassette now and show you how to operate that. With the cassette locker open, you've got access to the cassette. All you need to do is pull up on the handle and simply slide out like so. I'll put this out on the ground now so I can just show you how to operate. Once out, you'll notice that the cassette has a funnel on the front, which you just need to slide out and unscrew the cap. And you'll then notice that you've got two little switches on the back. When emptying this, you need to, as I say, unscrew the funnel, unscrew the cap, and then press this little orange button at the back, and that'll release a vacuum which is internal into the cassette, releasing all the water in one steady slurry. Once you've done that, you then need to push this cap back in, tighten the cap on, and then you can simply slide in. Now, as I mentioned, you'll also notice that you've got this here, which is almost like an orange lever. What you need to make sure is that this is always in this position when removing it and also putting the cassette back in. You shouldn't need to do anything with that. Just so you know, this makes contact with the blade. Your blade is on the toilet, which I'll go into more detail on the inside, and that allows the cassette to close and open for all the waste to go in. Make sure that that's in that position. Now, one thing I did forget to mention is when you are removing the cassette, make sure that the blade on the toilet, before doing so, is closed. It should always be closed. As I say, I'll go into more detail on the inside, but you should always make sure that that is closed. If it does feel like it's being jammed and you do go to remove it and it gets jammed, what can happen is you can simply break the cassette and break the systems on board. So do bear that in mind. Once loaded back into the area, slide far enough in that this little button connects into there and locks in. And then that is now fully locked in. Moving below the cassette, as I mentioned earlier, you have got a drain down point here, which is for your fresh water tank. You've got three main drain down points in a vehicle. You have your fresh water, your wastewater, and your boiler drain down point. They're all very important. You need to make sure that you do them every time you are not using the vehicle or going home. As I mentioned, fresh water is here. Now, whilst we're on the topic of your drain down points, all you need to do is simply turn that. You'll have a massive grid on site that you'll drive over, and all the water will then pour out. What you do also need to make sure of is that when you are travelling home, what I recommend is leaving this open, because the vibrations of the road are going to make sure that all that water in the fresh water tank is going to get out of the system and empty. At the end of the day, it is just water, so you're not going to cause any harm. I do this for both your fresh water, your wastewater, and also your drain down for your boiler, because as I mentioned, it is just water, and it's going to make sure that all that water is out of the vehicle and not going to end up being frozen. Moving across to the other side, you'll notice that you've got your awning, which is on the side here. Your awning you need to be careful about using, only using weather where there's no wind or hardly any wind, because as you can imagine, this is a massive sail, so once it's out and the wind gets underneath it, it has the potential of ripping the canvas and also breaking the awning bracket from the vehicle, damaging the bracket and also potentially harming someone. So do bear that in mind. To operate this, you'll have an awning pole somewhere in the vehicle that'll then connect onto here. You turn it halfway to then lock in. You can then turn the awning and wind it out. You'll have two legs in the top of the awning which you'll fold out, let them take the weight of the awning, and then you can simply angle the legs like so and wind out the awning, and this will come out about 3 or 4 meters. Obviously do that vice versa when you are putting it back in. Coming over to the side, you'll notice that you've got your habitation door here, along with a door lock on this particular model, and also your fridge vents, which are just here. Really quickly on the fridge, I'll go more into detail on the inside, but with your fridge, if you have got the sun beating down on this side of the vehicle, it is going to find it a lot harder to power the fridge and to cool it, because as you can see, this is where the fridge draws its air from, which it then uses to cool its contents. The fridge isn't like a domestic fridge, so it does a very good job at maintaining temperature. So if you have got the sun beating down on this side of the van, try and keep it in the shade or turn it around, just to help that system work more efficiently. Moving across, you've then got your gas external point, and then also this 230 socket as well, which is just in there. So if you want to plug in a microwave outside or anything along the lines of that. Below this, on the opposite side, very similar, is you have another drain down point. Now this is your waste drain down point. So the two main drain downs for the fresh and the waste are on the outside. Your boiler drain down point will be in the inside. This works the exact same. You just need to turn this, and that'll release the waste water. And as I say, you can leave this open as you are travelling home, because all the vibrations of the road are going to get all that water out. Finally, on this side, you'll notice that you've got a storage locker here. This gives you access to underneath the bed, and of course by lifting the bed when we're in the inside, you can access all that storage as well. Just open that up so you can see you've got that access point here. It's dead easy to get to. You have also got some leisure batteries underneath that plastic cap there. That's where that is located. Moving to the inside of the vehicle, you'll notice that you've got your control panel as you just enter on the left hand side of your habitation door. To operate this, all you need to do is click your master. Now your master is your main button. Once that is selected and it says master on, you'll notice that your lights are all activated. And this, as I say, activates everything in the vehicle. You've then got below your lights, so if you wanted to turn your lights off altogether, you can do, but leave the master on. As I say, you can do. You've then got your awning light, which is on the outside. As you can see, that has now indicated that it's on. And then finally, you've got your pump, which is just here. Now for your pump, and how this works is you click your pump on, and that will activate the pump and start pulling your fresh water through. Now before you do that, you of course need to make sure that there's water in your fresh water system, because if not and you run the pump, you'll simply burn the pump out. So make sure that you're only running the pump when there is fresh water in the system. That is really, really important. Once you have done that, click your pump on and then go to each of your taps, turn them on and then turn them to hot. What that's going to do is it's going to pull fresh water from the freshwater tank through the system into the boiler because you've turned it on hot first, and then out of the tap. It'll spurt and splutter, and then when it's running steadily, you have then primed your system for your hot water. Once you've done that, flick it over to cold and do the exact same, and once it's running steadily, as I say, you have primed the system for the water. Now, with regards to your pump, you can then leave that on because on all of your taps, including your shower, that is, you have got an isolator switch or a micro switch rather, which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it. So it's very similar to home. So when you turn your tap on, it's going to pull water through and activate your pump. So you don't need to do that. As I say, you only need to make sure that the pump is off when, of course, you're travelling off site and you've no water in the system. Just going through a few of the options with the control panel, you'll notice that you have got your water level, which shows your fresh water level there, your waste level, which again shows you your percentage there, it's an indication, and you've finally got your settings like that. You've also got here battery select. You can select this leisure, or if you wanted your vehicle battery, always leave this on leisure battery because that means that all your lights will run off your leisure battery, not your vehicle battery. If you, for example, select that on vehicle, it'll simply drain your vehicle battery, and you don't want that. Just flicking through the options again, you've also got your leisure battery voltage, as you can see there. Going through the settings panel as well, in all honesty, there's not much to the settings, but if I click enter, you can change the colour of the screen and things like that. And that is your control panel for the inside of the vehicle. Now, moving on from the control panel, you'll notice that you've got another panel up in it here which says Aldi on the top, and this is for your central heating system. Now, Aldi heating is very similar, as I say, to your central heating in the fact that it's a water system. All you need to do to operate this is turn it on. As you can see, it'll just load in. Then this is all touchscreen. So click your menu, and then that'll bring up your options. At the top, you've got your vehicle's temperature. Below that, you've got your water temperature. And then below that, you've got the options of fuel. As you can see, you could run this off 2 kilowatt electric, 1 kilowatt electric or 2 kilowatt electric, or you could run it off simply gas. So when you're going to be using them, you're going to set your temperatures at the top to where you want it. You're then going to click your button here and select that on either 1 or 2. Now, the majority of times you will select that on 2 kilowatt. However, for example, if you was on a site that didn't provide you with enough power, you'd have to select that onto 1 kilowatt. Now, if that's the case, if I was you, I'd personally put it on gas, just to run it off the gas, as it's always going to struggle, this vehicle, to heat this amount of space on just 1 kilowatt electric. Now, as I mentioned, your gas button is just below here. You're going to run the vehicle off gas. For example, if you are, let's say, wild camping or anything like that, you can just simply run it off the gas. Going back into the menu, as you can see, it's just timed out on me there. You have finally got another button here, which is for your settings. You can alter the brightness of the screen and things like that, but the main thing that you're going to need to know is your reset button. Now, you'll click your reset button, for example, if you get an error code. Now, the time that you're going to get an error code is, for example, if you ever run the heating on the wrong fuel, for example. So, for example, if you're trying to heat the vehicle using gas, but you haven't got any gas, you're going to get an error code because obviously it's trying to heat the vehicle with something that it's not got. As I say, you'll get an error code, so you need to click that reset, and then you need to wait 20 minutes for it to completely reset, and then you can reuse it. So do bear that in mind, and that's all in there for you. To turn this off, simply press that button. As you can see, it goes off straight away. Moving away from the control panel and into the kitchen area. The kitchen's very similar to what you get at home. You've got your hobs at the top with 1 electric plate and 3 other gas ones, and then also your microwave. Your microwave, obviously, can only work off 230 volts, so you won't be able to run that off when you're wild camping from your leisure battery. Do bear that in mind. Underneath, you got your oven and grill, like so, along with storage, which is just below. Now, You'll notice that you have got an isolator switch here, that's that red valve there. They are dotted around the vehicle and this isolates certain areas of the vehicle. Don't touch that, as I say, that is just an isolator switch and that is for the technicians who are working on the vehicle. You got more storage in the kitchen area, as you can see, which is really deep, which is all accessible as well. Behind me is the domestic fridge. As I mentioned on the fridge about the fridge on the outside, the fridge isn't like a domestic fridge. It does a very good job at maintaining temperature, but not the best of jobs getting down to temperature. So with that in mind, if you want cooled things to be in the fridge, put cooled things in, and if you want frozen things to be in the freezer, put frozen things in. Now in regards to operating the fridge, it's very simple. This is a three-way system, and that means that you can run it off three ways. So you can either run it off 230 volt, which when you're on site, that's what you'll be running it off. You can run it off gas, which when you're wild camping, that'll be that button. And then finally, you can run it off 12 volt, which is your leisure battery. Now, when are you going to be using each one? So as I mentioned, 230 volt is when you're on site, you'll be clicking that. Gas is for when you're wild camping, and then 12 volt is for when you're travelling. Now a lot of people think that they can run the fridge off 12 volt when they're wild camping. However, that isn't the case, because if that was, you'd simply drain the battery of all of its power. Because it draws so much power, you'd have no leisure battery left. So it'll only let you do that when you are travelling, because this vehicle has a built-in alternator, so as you're travelling down the road, it's going to keep charging that leisure battery up, which can then charge and power the fridge. So with that in mind, wild camping, keep it on gas. Now you'll notice that you have got a fourth button here that says auto, or says A rather, stands for auto, and that'll automatically assign whatever fuel you have got in the vehicle. So if I was you, when you turn on the fridge by clicking this button here, click the auto, and that'll automatically assign. Now for example, if this was to be knocked off by accident, or you did select the wrong fuel, you will get an error code. By resetting the fridge, you can click this here and reset that system. In the middle, you'll also notice that you've got a little thermometer. This is for the temperature of the fridge if you wanted to change it. Now moving on from the fridge, above this area, you'll notice that you've got a bit of storage along with your aerial and also solar panel regulator. Your solar panel regulator is this unit at the top, and you don't need to do anything with that, just leave that as it is. Below that, you can see that you've got your your aerial box, which at the moment, as indicated by the red light, it is on. Turn that off, just click that little button there, and that'll turn it off. Turn it on by sliding that, and as you can see, we're all on and ready to go. Once you've done that, you need to then unscrew the cap onto here, push the aerial up, and then tighten that in position. You have also got a little dial on here, which you can then alter, depending on obviously your signal and range. Before I move on from this unit, one thing to remember is to always put the aerial down when you're travelling, and this goes for all your checks. Make sure that skylights are all locked in and closed, your aerial is down, and all your windows are all closed. Moving into the bedroom area, you'll notice on here you have got a pull down blind, or pull across blind rather, which will just pull across here and connect to the magnetic strip. Here you'll notice you have some infill cushions for your bed at the front, along with an expansion tank here. This is for your Elddis heating system, and this contains your glycol solution for the system. Glycol solution is simply an antifreeze solution to stop that water from freezing in the tank, and that's where that is located. You've also got some hanging space as well. I'll now lift this bed up, because underneath your bed you've got your storage, as I mentioned, outside, but the main important thing is you have got your Elddis heating system boiler, which is controlled underneath the bed here. This will contain your drain down point for your boiler, which I'll show you now. Once the bed is lifted, as you can see, you gain access to it. You've got another isolator switch there, as I mentioned before, and underneath here you've got storage for your carpets. As I mentioned, your Elddis boiler system is right in the corner here. And the main thing, as it looks, is very complicated. However, it's very simple. The main thing that you need to know is what that yellow toggle does. As I mentioned, that is your drain down point for your boiler, and it's probably the most important drain down point you have. You need to make sure that you always drain down this system, because if you don't, you run the risk of getting frozen water in the system. As I mentioned, you'll have a grid on site which you can then drain into. Now at the moment it is closed. To open that, simply flick the tab up and that'll dump the water. Flick it down to close the system and then you're good to go. So for example, when you go into off-site and you've stopped using the vehicle, flick that up, let all the water drain out, and then leave it open when you do store the vehicle. When you come to then use it, you always need to make sure that that is down. A lot of people do forget about that, so make sure that you always do that. And as I say, that is all located here. Moving from the bed, you've then got your bathroom unit, which is into here. You've got your shower at the back and also your sink here. As I mentioned about priming your system, that applies to your shower and your sink in the back. And then as you can see, you've got your toilet below. Your toilet, as I mentioned outside, is really important. You've got that blade on the toilet, which as I say, you need to make sure is open when you are using it and closed when you're not. So when using this vehicle and this system, you need to open it by sliding it away from you. That'll open the cassette and allow you to use it. Once you've done that and all the waste has been dropped into the cassette, you then need to click that button on the top, that blue button. That'll activate your flush, and then once you've done that, you then need to close the cassette. You need to close the cassette for two reasons. One is to stop the odours from escaping, but two is to always get into the habit of closing that, so that means when you do come to remove that cassette, it's never going to get jammed. Moving back up to here, one thing to notice is when you are travelling, when you are flushing that system, you do need your pump on to activate the flush, and then you will get some red lights on the side here, just to indicate when the cassette is full. We have got some water in the cassette at the moment, hence why it is showing that red light, but once you've got that red light, you simply need to empty the cassette. Now coming into the lounge area, you'll notice that you've got two bench seats here. This area does turn into a bed by simply sliding out these two and then dropping the cushions into place to make a big double bed at the front. I've just removed some of the cushions as I'm now about to dismantle this area, because underneath here you have got a travelling seat which will flip up and face forward for kids and also passengers. As I say, you've got one underneath here and one underneath the other, and I'll show you how to operate that now. I'll just remove this area. You simply flip up the base and then you can access it. I'll show you now. With the cushions dismantled, the base popped up and this piece just folded. As you can see, you have got 2 points there. Just to fold that in, you can access the seat. Now the seat is very easy to set up. You've got two levers on the side here. As you can see, I've just set the seat up there by using these levers. All you need to do is push this one. That'll allow you to control the top, and then pull this second one, which will allow you to lean it forward and flip this section out. You've then got your belted seat with one here, and as I say, you have got one on the other side, which is just here. Once folded back like so, you can then reassemble the lounge. Now that concludes the handover video on the Elddis Encore 255. I hope you enjoyed.